Commercial vehicles. Working with you to bring you great value. Available on any new Caddy or Transporter panel van purchased through Volkswagen Finance. Participating van centres only until 20th December. Terms and conditions apply. Business users only.
LBC 97.3. Call Clegg. Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg takes your calls with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is Call Clegg on London's biggest conversation. LBC 97.3.
It's 9 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of November. I'm Nick Clegg, bringing you Call Clegg on LBC 97.3. So I'm here for the next half hour, and you can put any question you want to me. If you want to get in touch, call on 0845 6060 973 or email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And you can also watch on the website, lbc.co.uk. So,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to interrupt just for once.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if that's allowed.
We'll talk later about London Mayor Boris Johnson and his views. But quick IQ test for you, Deputy Prime Minister. This is from an official IQ test. Take 2 apples from 3 apples. What do you have?
Yeah, but I cheated because you told me this earlier.
Oh, that's too kind of you.
I know, you're being very kind to me. That's 2. I would have said 1.
Okay.
Well, so I got that one wrong.
I'll give you one more then. If you only had 1 match and entered a cold and dark room where there was an oil heater, an oil lamp and a candle, which would you light first? If you had only 1 match and entered a cold and dark room where there was an oil heater, an oil lamp and a candle, which would you light first? It's an IQ question.
Well, obviously the match first.
There we are. You're batting 1. Yeah, absolutely right.
Whoa!
Absolutely right. So
I've passed the Boris Johnson test. I haven't been cast onto the scrap heap of hopelessness for the Mayor of London.
First question, Deputy Prime Minister.
Right, Philip in Camden. Philip?
Yes, good morning.
Hello, Philip.
Do I call you Nick? Is that acceptable?
That's
right, Nick. You're not going to get an IQ question from me. Right. I'm an immigration lawyer.
Yes.
And following the recent announcement yesterday by the government, which you supported, I just really wanted to ask you one question. The recent changes or attempts to restrict access to benefits is currently under legal challenge, so far as I understand. And I wanted to know to what extent your support for the new restrictions is conditional on their legality, and what your position would be if it is found that these restrictions aren't legal.
Well, of course, we think
European law.
Sure. No, Philip. Well, it was a very good question. I mean, of course, we believe these proposals, these measures, to be legal. You know, I wouldn't. But can I just finish the sentence?
Let's hear from Mr. Clegg. Back to you in a minute, Philip.
We don't put forward things that we don't believe are legal, and the government of the day must always act within the law and act in line with the law. So I am not a lawyer. My experience is that lawyers can always debate the legal aspects of pretty well anything, but we are putting these things forward confident that they are legal, and of course it would be entirely wrong to do anything else. But as you know, the legality of a lot of this is governed by the European treaties and the legal understanding of the right to move freely across the European Union to seek to work. And what I think the starting point that I have in this, as someone, of course, who is I don't think there's any more passionate defender than me of our right to be able to move freely across the European Union. There are about 2 million Brits living and working elsewhere in the European Union. So it's a freedom I want us to protect. But I think freedom to move is not, of course, the same as the freedom to claim benefits automatically upon arrival, and that's the distinction we're making in putting forward these measures.
Philip.
So, well, thank you for that answer. One further follow-up question: if, to the extent that any of these proposals are held not to be in compliance with European law, are you prepared to support Mr. Cameron in in letting the UK be held to be a nasty country?
Well, as I say, we believe that these measures are obviously within the law, and I can speak not only for myself but for the whole government. We of course, no government acts illegally, and until and if it is proven that these measures are somehow breaching the law, we will proceed on the basis that they are legal. But as I say, that I think the really important point here is not, I personally don't believe that this is a nasty thing to do, because I think that the way to protect this founding principle that we can move across the European Union freely, and as I say, hundreds of thousands, in fact millions of British people do that and live and work elsewhere in the European Union, the way to protect that freedom of movement and maintain public confidence at a time of obviously great pressure on public finances and because of the huge discrepancies in wealth between wealthier and poorer parts of the European Union, is, I think, to draw a distinction between maintaining that freedom of movement, that principle, but saying that the freedom to come and work in a place is not the freedom to claim benefits. No questions asked from day one.
Let me just remind listeners why perhaps we're using the word nasty. It's the EU Employment Commissioner and Laszlo Andor, if I'm correctly pronouncing, warning Britain plans to curb welfare benefits could risk making Britain seem a, quotes, nasty country. How would you respond to Mr. Andor?
I think the Commissioner is just plain wrong, because what we're doing is actually something that happens in other member states already. In the Netherlands, you don't get unqualified access to benefits until 3 months have elapsed, which is exactly one of the measures that we are proposing. There are Brits living and working in Germany, where, in fact, the new German government, in its coalition agreement, which it published yesterday, actually highlighted this was an area where they themselves wanted to take action. The socialist President Hollande yesterday in France, his government also said this is an issue. So across the European Union, member states, I think, are having a perfectly rational debate that says as the European Union grows and grows, it used to be right at the beginning a community of 6 countries. It is now a club of 28. We must, yes, protect the freedom for people to move and work around the European Union, but that is not the same as saying that you can claim benefits on the day one, no strings attached, no questions asked. And that's the distinction which we're seeking to draw. I don't think, given that ourselves, the Germans, the Dutch, the French and others are asking exactly the same question, I don't think it's right for the Commission to turn around and say this is just a sort of British issue.
But writing in The Independent today, Owen Jones, who you probably know or certainly know of, to kowtow...
No, I don't.
Owen Jones, he's a regular columnist for The Independent newspaper. Yep, OK. He's written books about the collapse of the white working classes, is one of his books. He's a sort of acknowledged Labour-leaning, perhaps, columnist.
Probably why I don't know him.
Possibly why you don't know him. And you sometimes hear him on LBC 97.3. To kowtow to the Tories, Nick Clegg has reneged on many pledges, but scapegoating immigrants is his most unforgivable collaboration.
It's just a ludicrous thing to say. Look, I've had so many sort of silly things said about me, particularly by left-leaning columnists. I think actually I'm speaking up for the vast majority of British people who believe that yes, we should welcome people who come here, want to work, play by the rules, pay their taxes and so on, but that is not the same as having an automatic right to benefits paid for, by the way, from a system to which they haven't necessarily contributed. Look, I think it's a really simple but important distinction, that the right to move is not the same as the right to claim. Okay. That's the distinction we're making. There's no one, by the way, whoever this columnist is, there's no one who's been more outspoken than me over many, many years saying that we should be in the European Union, not pulling up the drawbridge and pulling out of it, which is what parts of the Conservative Party and certainly the UKIP want to do. That, of course, in my view, would make this country poorer and less safe, would put millions of people out of work. So I'm a great advocate of that. But equally, you've got to make sure that people feel confident that the system is there, such that you can't simply turn up on day one and get benefits, no questions asked.
But lastly, on this, Deputy Prime Minister, we've known for 6 years what was happening regarding Romania and Bulgaria, and now with 34 days to go, suddenly the measures come in now. Why so late?
You've got to remember, this is something which would apply to all people coming in from other European Union member states. So it's not something which is only aimed at the change after January the 1st, and it actually comes hot on the heels of a number of other changes
it will assist regarding January the 1st, won't it? It will.
Well, it won't. It's not going to stop someone from coming here. That's not the purpose of it.
It'll be implemented by January.
What it will stop someone is coming here in order to claim benefits.
We could have done it a couple of years ago.
Well, we've actually introduced a number of measures. This is, if you like, just the latest step in a number of measures where we've tried to say that the benefit system there is to help people who are in need, of course, but that it is not an unqualified right to claim benefits for anyone who just arrives here from another country.
We have plenty of people on the line. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Clegg. And it's Adam. Yes,
yes, Adam in Heathrow.
Hello there, Mr. Clegg.
Hi,
just on the back of what the last question was, I'd just like to add, having just come back from Bulgaria, trying to claim in Bulgaria would be a completely different story from claiming over here. But on to my main question.
More difficult?
Way more. For their own citizens, they cut their benefit off after 6 months, whether they've got a job or not. You get allocated jobs out there. So as far as maybe we could employ a reciprocal scheme like that.
Well, don't necessarily want to go down that way. Let's move to today's question, if you would, Adam. Thank you.
Yes, on the back of what Dominic Greaves said about corruption being endemic in Pakistan, my job entails me dealing with Pakistan on a frequent basis.
What do you do, Adam?
I'm working with the realms of immigration.
Mm-hmm.
On the back of that, how do we stop that corruption culture becoming endemic in the British Pakistani community in this country?
Well, I think, as Dominic made clear subsequent to that, I don't think it is right, and I didn't share, at least the way that his views were initially reported. I don't share this suggestion that it's a problem which is only particular to one community. I think that is that's misleading, and that's actually quite offensive to many people in the British Pakistani community. I think Dominic, who's a very, very decent, measured guy, clarified his remarks subsequently. Corruption is wrong wherever you find it, and you need to root it out wherever you find it. And I don't think we should start somehow pretending that corruption is only the property of one community as opposed to another. Corruption, I'm afraid, pops up in all sorts of communities, in all sorts of different contexts.
Quick response from you, Adam.
It's been my experience that, unfortunately, mainly within the Bengali and the Pakistani communities, that corruption, especially when it comes to legal matters, corruption is absolutely endemic. And it's not, and this is nothing casting aspersions against the people who are born of Pakistani parents. It's first-generation settlers that have brought this with them. How do we turn this around?
Well, I think that what you do, as I say, is just make sure that the law of the land is the law of the land applied to everybody evenly, rigorously, and without fear or favour, so that everybody understands if you are a British citizen, wherever you hail from originally, you abide by the law, and that we've got these law enforcement agencies, from the police to the fraud authorities and so on, who stamp out corruption. We're introducing measures as a government to make sure, for instance, that corruption in the electoral process is electoral fraud, for instance, is stamped out by moving towards a system where everybody has to individually register in order to vote. So there's always more things that governments can do. We're doing that, but I just think that's the way to tackle the issue of corruption, not to start trying to come up with some kind of league table of who suffers from corruption more than other communities.
Adam, thank you. A couple of email questions, if I may, Deputy Prime Minister. Graham in Bushy. The majority of MPs at PMQs were wearing red ribbons this week in recognition of World AIDS Day. Why didn't you? Asks Graham.
Because I think World AIDS Day is on
December 1.
Yep. So of course I will wear it on the.
But I suppose it was it'll be the nearest PMQs, won't it? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think what we've got to do, and I'm doing some things to mark this very, very important day. But the day is on the December the 1st. Okay, PMQs did not occur on December the 1st.
Mark in Guildford. David Cameron reportedly called you an idle effer this week. What do you...
A what? What's the second word?
F
what
word.
Is
F word.
I couldn't hear that, Nick.
What? You're not going to hear it.
I don't know what you're talking to.
I've got a mortgage to pay and a lot of other debts. An idle effer this week. What do you usually call him, and what did he mean? This, if you're not aware, is apparently said in jest.
Oh, am I aware now?
David Cameron is said to have used the term in jest as he urged a friend to tease his deputy for slacking off to go for dinner with his wife, that's with his own wife, I hasten to add, while he, David Cameron, was out there batting for Britain.
I don't know. I think I'm feeling just too lazy to answer.
You can't feel too lazy. How do you respond to that?
He must have got me confused with Slacker Johnson. It must have been someone else he was thinking of.
How's the tennis going?
I'm playing a fair amount of tennis, but not with the Prime Minister. If that is what you're about to ask, I suspect.
Apparently he calls you the Clegger. during your tennis matches?
No, that's nonsense.
And he regularly trounces you?
That's not quite...
This is what I can't work out, Mr. Clegg.
Regularly, I think, is an exaggeration of the scale of my defeat.
You were captain of tennis at your school.
I'm a generous guy, Nick. You know, when I play with people who aren't quite up to scratch, I need to try and... You need to build up other people's self-confidence by letting them win from time to time.
How many points do you give him?
Oh, I always try and be as generous.
He's having extra practice, isn't he? Secretly, he's having extra. He is. That's what we've heard. He's having extra tuition.
Get him on the show and ask him for heaven's sake.
Well, you see him more often than I do. What was the score at the last game?
It was very, very close. It was a photo finish, but yes, I have to admit, here on air, I didn't. He pipped me at the post.
What is it? His serve? What's he got that you? Lastly, what has he got a better serve than you usually?
Do you know, I think I was quite erratic. I think I just threw away too many points. So I feel I was showing flourishes of genius from time to time that it just wasn't shown very consistently.
Like the midfield general. Some of the passes didn't quite connect.
Exactly.
Back to the calls.
Too many straight into the net.
Yes.
Charlotte in Shenley. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Clegg. Good morning, Nick.
Hello.
Hi, I'm calling regarding the scheme of befriending an elderly member of the community. It was discussed yesterday.
Yep.
I'm just so pleased it's being brought to everyone's attention because it's just so sad how these important members of society are being...
Just so I can remind the listeners, back to you in a second, this is the NHS calling for an army of good Samaritans to check on lonely and elderly neighbours in cold winter. They're looking for around 100,000 people to look in on. People you know already, not bang on the door as a stranger. Someone perhaps you see during the summer months you can help out. Charlotte, back to your question of Mr. Clegg.
Yes, it's a subject very close to my heart because I volunteered on such a scheme and was paired up with a very wonderful yet lonely lady, and I visited her for 5 years. Oh. And my question to you, Mr. Clegg, is how will you ensure more members of society will take part in the scheme, but not just for this, it's a dangerously cold winter, but throughout the whole year?
Well, I think probably the most important thing, Charlotte, is to make sure that the scheme goes well, that we do get these 100,000 volunteers, that they then speak to others, that your personal experience, which I think many people listening would relate to, is that it is, firstly, that the loneliness of elderly people sitting at home, finding it difficult to get out to the shops, worried, obviously, particularly at winter time, about how to keep their homes warm, giving them company, giving them regular human, contact and warmth in the other sense of the word, is such a rewarding thing to do. And I was talking to Esther Ranson recently, who's just set up, as you might know, Charlotte, Silverline, I think it's called,
yep.
Which is such a, it's a bit, as you say, Charlotte, it's kind of, I said to her, it's amazing this hasn't been set up before, because it's such a simple idea. It allows those, elderly people who are feeling cut off, feeling lonely, feeling they don't know who to talk to have a means by which they can speak to somebody. And I think the fact that we're lifting a lid on this problem, there's a real problem of the loneliness of many of our fellow elderly citizens. I think it's a great thing. The fact that you're doing is wonderful. The fact that the government's obviously trying to work.
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm not doing any volunteering myself in that sense, but I hugely admire Charlotte and others who are.
Quick comeback for you, Charlotte.
It's a very, very, it is, as you say, it's a very simple thing to do. Yeah. It was such a small part of my week, but such a big part.
How much time did you spend, Charlotte?
Sorry?
How much time did you?
How much time?
Yeah.
I would go round there every Saturday. We'd have a chat. Initially when I first met her, obviously I wanted to make sure that she was happy and, for me to be there, because that's another thing as well. But she was, and we would have a chat.
Did she choose you, or were you allocated?
No, I was allocated to her. And I would paint her nails, and then I'd start taking her shopping and make her lunch and just help. Unfortunately, she was starting the early sort of signs of dementia, and as the years went by, that sort of really kicked in.
But you probably became very close over those 5 years.
We did, yes, and it was a very, very important part of her week. And I think, it did give her a lifeline, because what we really want is for these elderly people to be in their homes for as long as possible, without being moved to, elsewhere. And I think it really did give her that, that close contact with somebody else. And I have to say to anybody that has a spare hour, or I know everybody's so busy, but rather than having another hour in front of the TV or around the shops on a Saturday, just to visit somebody, even if it is just for half an hour and an hour, it just makes such a difference.
Yeah, well, it's great that you did that.
Lovely positive note on which to end, and I totally echo that call. Let's hope lots of people are listening and get involved. It's the Volunteer or Samaritans Army through the NHS. There are details on their website. Deputy Prime Minister. John in Brixton. Hi, John.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Morning, John.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning. Can you get me, sir?
Yes, it's Nick Clegg. Hello, John. Have you got a question?
Yeah, I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Are you on 0-hour contract?
I am not on a 0-hour contract, no.
Will you be happy to be on one?
I beg your pardon?
Would you be happy to be on one?
Would you be happy to be on one? I think, John, come back to you in a second. Workers on 0-hour contracts are more likely to be happy with their work-life balance than any other employees, said a survey from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development this week. John, I sense you're not happy. Is that what you're driving at? And you wonder why these people are saying that. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying, sir.
OK, let's get back to
John,
Mr.
can I ask
you,
you're on a 0-hour contract, are you?
Yeah, I'm on 0-hour contract for almost 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just asking you if you would be happy to be on 0-hour contract. That's the question.
Yeah, sure. I think the point I would make, John, is that there are some people, and I've met some of them, who actually find some of the flexibilities in those kind of contracts suit them. There are other people, yourself obviously included, who are not happy with it, and we're looking at the parts of this whole system that may well be entirely unjustified, particularly where people are on 0-hour contracts. They're not being used at all by their employers, but they're actually being prevented from, under the exclusive arrangements of their contracts, from looking for other work elsewhere. So it's something that we are looking into. We're absolutely not ruling out taking action to make sure that where there is an abusive imbalance in the arrangements, that those are stopped. But I certainly my experience speaking to a number of people who are on 0-hour contracts is that some people actually find that the flexibility suits them. Others clearly find that they're trapped in a system where, I'm not sure what your experience is, John, but I've also spoken to others who say, look, it's just completely unreasonable that we sit there. We're not told till Sunday night whether we're going to work the following day. Then the following day, suddenly it changes again. We sit around waiting to make an appearance at work, and then we're told at the end of the day we're not needed. Yeah. That kind of insecurity, I can imagine, it must be very, very unsettling.
Quick response from you, John.
Yes, sir. Because I am now collecting leaves. I don't know whether my contract will end tomorrow when the leaves finish or today.
Yeah.
And then people are saying that we are happy. I don't know, as a family man, how can you be heading to a war job that you don't know tomorrow if you have a job?
I mean, in fairness, it's not the government, it's not Mr. Clegg who's saying it, it's a separate body that's suggested, so it's perhaps a little bit fair, but I think, thank you very much indeed, John, and that's very tough, particularly with Christmas coming up. I wish you well and I wish you lots of employment. I'm going to, if I may now, Mr. Clegg, steal some of your time. Boris Johnson yesterday gave a speech in which he, and I'm paraphrasing broadly, some people are simply too stupid to get on. They're not educated to a level where they can enjoy the economic recovery that's on its way.
Well, I don't agree with Boris Johnson on this, and I have to say to you, much though he's a funny and engaging guy, I have to say I think these comments reveal a fairly unpleasant, careless elitism that somehow suggests that we should give up on a whole swathe of our fellow citizens.
Does he say give up, Mr. Clegg?
Well, I think to talk about as if we are a sort of breed of dogs, a species, I think he calls it, where...
Whether you may think of value of IQ tests, it's surely relevant to a conversation about equality that as many as 16% of our species have an IQ below 85, about 2% have an IQ above 130. He then talks about shaking up the cornflake packet.
Yeah, and I think the danger is if you start taking such a deterministic view of people and start saying because they've got a number attached to them, in this case an IQ number, somehow they're not really going to rise to the top of the cornflake packet. That is complete anathema to everything I've always stood for in politics, which is yes, of course you can't have and you shouldn't aspire, absolutely not. As an old-fashioned liberal, I don't aspire to a perfectly homogenous society where everybody has exactly the same kind of outcomes, but you've got to try and do more to instill greater opportunity in society. And there are people who, there's certainly young people, I know children who develop at different paces, who might discover talents they didn't know about before, and our job surely in politics is not to simply say, look, we're going to hive off one bunch of people and put them in one kind of category and kind of basically say they're parked and that there's not much we can do about them. Instead, what we should be doing is saying we should be instilling an opportunity culture, a culture of aspiration, of hard work, where people can get ahead for everybody. And that's we talked about this before. That's why I think so many of the measures, whether it's fairer tax system so people keep more money in their pocket when they work, even on low incomes, whether it's helping more people with childcare, with early intervention for toddlers so that they get a good start in life. All of these things are about precisely not kind of treating society like a kind of great big cake where you kind of divide it up in slices and say we're not going to do much about this slice, but we are going to concentrate on that slice.
Lastly on this, it was an address in memory of the late Lady Thatcher. How much is Boris Johnson morphing into a Thatcher figure with comments such as these?
Well, look, it's for the Conservatives to sort of, they seem to have a absolute fascination to constantly rake over the history of the 1980s. We're 2013. We're not 1986. The times have moved on.
It is Thatcheresque, though, isn't it? A sentiment such as this.
Well, I think what I really object to about the what in how can I put it politely appears to be a very wide-ranging speech with some, as ever, funny, colourful phrases about the kind of Freudian fear that men have of the deep recesses. All of that's great. That's funny. I like it. But what I really don't like, actually, is the rather careless elitism which seems to lie at the heart of it. And I think that is a very dispiriting message to many parents who'll be listening to this, to many youngsters who are listening to this, who, despite all the challenges they might face, want to kind of get ahead in life. And it seems to me what we should be about in politics is encouraging people to get ahead in life, not basically saying to people, well, if you're not up to scratch, you might as well give up.
Lastly, let's get an email before we go back to calls. Rachel in Leicester. Mr. Clegg, will you answer honestly? When you first came on the programme, you said you were trying to give up smoking. How has that gone through this year? And would it make a difference if cigarettes were in plain paper wrapping? Two questions.
I always go when I ask this question because I'm trying to be a little less categorical. I do lapse from time to time, but my smoking habit is much more under control than it ever.
How many do you
was.
smoke a day or a week?
No, I don't. Not every day. It's much less. But what I'm not going to pretend is that I will never ever smoke a cigarette again in my life because I suspect I might well.
It's because you're so busy. You're not an idle. You're busy. That's why you're smoking.
I'm not an idle. What?
That word.
Say the word.
Would you want me to lose my job? No, I won't say the word. You've got
the Prime Minister can say it.
I know. I'm appalled. He even knows words like that. He obviously went to a shocking school. Now.
On the plain packaging thing, as you will have heard this morning in the news, we're commissioning a independent review. It's a short review. It'll go on till next March, which will look into the emerging evidence. It's almost exactly a year since the legislation was passed in Australia on plain packaging. It shows actually what I think we talked about this on this programme many months ago. It shows exactly what I said at the time, which is that we have an open mind as a government on this. We haven't got a closed mind on this. And if the review, as I have to say personally, I rather hope, if the review suggests that the emerging evidence argues in favour of plain packaging, it's a measure which we would then proceed with. Would it have made a difference when you bought your first packet? How old were you? I don't know, my early teens or something. I can't ever remember.
Early teens, Mr. Clegg.
I can't ever remember.
14?
I can't remember when I first bought my first packet of cigarettes.
15.
I mean, for heaven's sake, I know I'm supposed to be a walking encyclopedia on all sorts of things, but I can't remember. But
would it have made a difference if it was in a brown wrapper, or were you drawn to a sexy picture of a soldier?
No.
I think, was there a guard?
My memory actually is that it was so much to do with peer pressure. It was all the boys and girls in my sort of in my kind of year were smoking, and you just sort of holding out from that. I suspect that was lots of now. What the evidence does appear to suggest is that one of the things that drives, but it's not the only thing, but one of the things that drives is the kind of glamour with which cigarette packages are presented and marketed.
With a cowboy on the front, or whatever.
And marketed at young people. And as I say, if the evidence shows, as the emerging evidence appears to show, that this would make a difference, then we as a government, of course, will take that step.
All right, we have more calls.
Graham in Bexley Heath. Hello, Graham.
Oh, hi, Nick. Yes, I was wondering when you're going to make it a government policy to stop smoking on NHS grounds.
Okay. This was, of course, a recommendation, Graham, as I'm sure you by NICE yesterday. They're saying that NH hospitals should ban smoking on their premises, obviously for visitors and for staff, which is quite radical. You, Graham, I think we chatted on this briefly about your granddad, as I recall.
Yeah, I was just going to refer my Nick to my grandfather, who after smoking for 77 years gave up instantly when they said, well, either carry on smoking or you die at the age of 90. Yeah. He gave up that day.
Yeah. So it's a recommendation from NICE. I have to say, normally hospitals do follow, as I'm sure you're aware, Deputy Prime Minister, so it's probably going to be policy.
I think it's probably, Graham, your precise question is, when is the government going to make it the rule? My understanding, I'll double check, is that this recommendation is a recommendation aimed at the trusts that obviously run our hospitals and run the grounds in which the hospitals are located, because I think this is quite a lot about smoking under these shelters.
Yes, absolutely right.
Exist. And I'm kind of assuming that the trusts are going to follow this advice.
We took calls yesterday briefly from nurses who said, look, it's simply not fair. We work long hours, we're very stressed, it's not illegal, we want to go out the back and have a cigarette. It's a bit draconian if we've got to walk out of hospital premises, cross the road and stand by a bus stop.
Yes, I mean...
That's not very liberal, is it?
Well, and this is actually where the trusts, in many ways, are best placed to answer, because I suspect...
But it's not liberal, is it, to make a nurse pour him or her across the road in the pouring rain to have a cigarette?
Well, I think a workplace, your employer has every right to decide whether you can, in your workplace, smoke or not. That's not unique to the NHS. The reason why I think this has drawn attention is because, of course, the NHS is there about spending a lot of money and deploying a lot of technology to keep people healthy. But this is not out of keeping with what happens in many workplaces where you're not allowed to smoke either in the office or in surrounding areas. But what I can't answer to you is whether, if you're a nurse working in a particular trust and the exit is very near a main road, which is not part of the trust's land, would you then just kind of go stand on the other side of the fence and smoke? That's the kind of micro detail which trusts will have to sort out themselves.
Let's try and cram one last one. If
Andy in Islington. Hello, Andy.
Hello, good morning, Nick and Nick.
Hi.
Mr. Clegg, this week you said mothers returning to work after having babies should be given priority for jobs or more support. Why should mothers be given priority or more support over our young, which I believe are about 1 million unemployed, or our over 50s who find it most difficult to get work, or anybody else?
Just because I strongly believe that we still have these Edwardian rules in place, which mean that when a family have a new baby, the rules basically say that the mum has to take all the time off. The dad can only take 2 weeks off after the baby is born. And as a survey from Mumsnet this week showed, many women feel that it is extremely difficult for them to combine having children and also having a successful career. And it seems to me that what we should be doing in government and in politics is making it easier for mums and dads to take their own choices. And that's why I'm such a keen advocate of shared parental leave, where mums and dads can actually swap the leave entitlement they've got. So, for instance, if a mum actually wants to go back to work more quickly and the dad wants to take more time off, they're free to take that choice.
Quick response.
Mr. Clegg,
go on, Andy.
Mr. Clegg, you just said that we shouldn't be treating society like a piece of cake, doing something for one slice and not another. And in my opinion, when you advantage one part of that cake, you disadvantage another. No, the young, the old, we all need jobs. No, why should you give priority to one set?
Sorry, Andy, I so strongly disagree with you. This idea that by liberating women to combine family and work better by updating our outdated Edwardian parental leave laws, that somehow we are taking jobs away from other people, is just plain wrong. I think there's a chronic waste of talent, of expertise, and actually of job creation by getting more women involved in work by updating these rules. And that actually in turn then creates more job opportunities for the old, for the young and for the others. You know, a woman who can't go back to work because of these clapped out rules is not taking a job from somebody else. Actually, the whole economy is suffering because we're not giving women more opportunity to combine family and work. And that's why I remain, unlike you, Andy, a very, very keen advocate of us changing these rules.
A text question lastly, or one before last. Deputy Prime Minister, you and your sons are football fans. You follow Arsenal. How concerned are you about the reports of fixing football games? Admittedly, these are lower league games.
It's not in the professional game.
No, it's not. It's the amateur. So far, but no, it's not breached the professional game. But any game, of course, if it's fixed,
it needs to be looked at. And I'm not, like any person who follows football, I've read accounts of football match fixing in other countries, and kind of thought, well, there by the grace of God go we, kind of thing. To hear that it's now being investigated here, I think there've been these arrests in the Midlands.
Yes, there have, yeah.
Is very worrying. I really, really hope that's the sum total of it. I mean, it would be terrible if we look back on this in months and years to come and discover this is the tip of. There certainly was no match fixing when Arsenal beat Marseille 2-0 this week. That's all I can tell you.
No, well done. Most clearly no match fixing when Cameron thrashes you on the tennis court.
All right.
And lastly, we finished. Let's see how this is going to go. Rosie in Cricklewood.
That was so below
the belt, was it? Yes, or into the net, perhaps. Rosie in Cricklewood, with the word selfie becoming Oxford Dictionary Dictionary's word of the year. Would you please tweet your first selfie in the studio, or maybe a jointy, don't panic, with Nick Ferrari, which is 2 people in a selfie.
Is the jointy in the dictionary? No.
No, that's a new one that's developing, where it's the 2 of us.
Well, should we do a jointy?
Yeah.
Let's do a jointy.
Have you got your mobile...
a jointy. Absolutely, I was before.
Yeah. Have you got your mobile phone handy?
No, but I'm sure you do.
Well, I don't know how to do it.
We'll do it
right, we will be doing a jointy with a Y on the end. Oh, you got that there? We'll do a joint. Right, we're going to do a jointy. So this is for you. Where's your name? Rosie in Cricklewood. Let's do a jointy. I'll come round. We'll be by the LBC. Otherwise, well, do you know what to do? I don't know what sort of radio this makes. Well done. This is great. Fantastic. What do we do? We'll do it like this. But that doesn't... I better hold it, haven't I?
Yeah. Very good. Done.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the tennis. Nick Clegg joining us here on LBC 97.3. 9:34 news is next.
David Cameron is going back on his decision not to ban branded cigarette packs. Last July, he said the government wasn't going to introduce plain packaging, but it's emerged they could be sold in England by 2015. Speaking on LBC 97.3, Nick Clegg's been explaining the decision.
We have an open mind as a government on this. We haven't got a closed mind on this. And if the review, as I have to say personally, I rather hope, if the review suggests that the emerging evidence argues in favour of plain packaging,